Beetlejuice. Beetlejuice. Beetlejuice.
It's showtime.
You know that old trope in stories in which the bad guy gains power the more you say his name?
1428 Elm. It's gotta be him, right? It's gotta be Freddy Krueger.
Hey, don't even say that son of a bitch's name out loud.
My earliest memory of this idea was me, 8 years old, huddled up in a dark bathroom in elementary school as another kid chanted Bloody Mary into the mirror. I was terrified. A few years later, I stumbled upon it again in this book.
A few years ago, there was one wizard that went as bad as you can go, and his name was Voldemort.
Voldemort?
And then once more, as a geeky high schooler, sat in a theater as my two favorite horror movie monsters battled it out on the silver screen. At some point within the first month of me discovering magic, this speak of the devil trope showed itself again, this time in a local game store. Saying the words Jace the Mind Sculptor there was like bringing up the big bad wolf to the three little pigs. The name was met with shaking heads and audible sighs. This name is an incantation, one that incites rhetoric driven by troubled memories. Jace the Mind Sculptor is alluring and infamous. And for 7 years, it has been the boogeyman of magic. Of all the cards and characters in Magic history, few are as renowned as Jace the Mind Sculptor. Its reputation is sustained by a stockpile of think piece articles surrounding its design and its banning, all of which debate the merit of its position in the game. Apart from an encyclopedic amount of writing, Mind Sculptor has been made into fan art, reimagined in classic art styles by the game's most skilled card alterer, and even printed on fine silver straight from the New Zealand Mint in the form of a collectible coin. He is a trademark of the Magic brand and its middle years. Songs have been written bearing its name, from electro producer Michna's relaxed and contemplative piece to Hall of Famer Patrick Chapin's rap soliloquy praising it as better than all. One of my favorite old YouTubers, Jack the Mind Sculptor, bears the card's epithet. Jack, if you're watching, thanks for teaching me how to play. Of course, the memes are aplenty as well. Unbanned Jace has become a punchline for players everywhere. Hell, a group of Canadian punk rockers adapted the phrase and formed a band. So how did we get here? How is it that everyone who has touched a Magic card knows Mind Sculptor?
We knew we wanted Jace to be awesome. I mean, a big piece of that was the 4 abilities. And we knew that, okay, we want him to have 4 abilities.
That's the voice of former Magic designer Mike Turian. Here he is talking about designing each ability on Evan Irwin's The Magic Show from 2010. Through watching these interviews, we learned that research and development always had big plans for Jace's second iteration. According to Mark Rosewater, his first form, Jace Beleren, quickly became the most popular of the original Lorwyn 5, which ultimately determined why only he received the 4-ability frame. This frame was in their back pocket from the very beginning, and they committed to using it only for special cases. As of today, of the 102 Planeswalker cards printed, only 4 have 4 abilities on their front side. When Jace was printed, the evaluations from the game's prominent players were not unanimous.
I actually don't think the card's very good. I like the other Jace more. If I played a blue deck, I would have played that.
It's really good. We were getting closer and closer to Jace Beleren being my favorite card, and then they printed a better one, and as soon as I saw it, I was like, I'm gonna love this thing.
I don't like it. I don't like the decks that run it. I think the decks that people played in are bad. At F&M, it'll be great. People play bad around it, but I don't like the card.
But one pro saw very clearly the future of the card and of the Type 2 format. In February 2010, Patrick Chapin predicted the year ahead of him and called the shots in a talk on the Magic Cruise.
Today I'm going to talk about World Wake's impact on Type 2, and there actually is more to it than Jace the Mind Sculptor is good. Let me start with why I think Jace the Mind Sculptor is going to define the format and warp everything else around it. You need to have a lot of ways to be able to beat Jace, because you need to be able to count on having one at all times. Because if you let the guy start Jacing, it's going to get worse for you really fast. I mean, the way you know it's over is as soon as he looks at the top of your library and says you can keep it, you're sure. I mean, it's not getting any better. I know this sounds kind of boring, but I promise you, you're gonna be way more bored of Jace 6 months from now than you are now.
At the end of that year, like a premonition, Brian Kibler showed up to Worlds 2010 in Japan with the very first deck that utilized Jace to its maximum potential. Nicknamed Caw Go, the deck sported only 4 creatures in the form of Squadron Hawk, and leaned into control magic for its victory conditions. Of these, Jace the Mind Sculptor was center stage. Oh, and that singleton Jace Beleren there, Chapin called that too.
Eventually there might be some future where things are so warped around Jace that people are playing bad Jace just to preemptively make it so that your opponent can't play good Jace on his turn. You know, because like if you're behind, like, you know what I mean? So you just put out bad Jace and draw a card and you're like, oh, I have a seal of Jace on the table. You know what I mean?
Kibler's innovative brew made another professional appearance a few months later at PT Paris in February 2011, and was featured in a deck tech with Brad Nelson. Ben Stark piloted nearly the same build into the finals of the tournament, pitting him against Paul Rietzel on Boros Aggro. On the back of Mind Sculptor's +2 ability, colloquially known as Fate Sealing, Ben Stark won the Pro Tour in 4 games. Caw Go, though, was just the beginning. With the release of Scars of Mirrodin came the first new piece of tech for the shell. Equipping Squadron Hawks with the card advantage machine of Sword of Body and Mind created a new win condition for the deck all by itself. A set later, Sword of Feast and Famine joined the build, and everything was solidified when New Phyrexia gave Magic players Batterskull. A key component to the synergies was an innocuous 2-drop creature that lived under the radar until the equipment showed up. But StoneForge Mystic's tutor ability assured that the blades would always arrive in perfect order. Surrounding Jace the Mind Sculptor was a synergistic Voltron war machine that proved unstoppable for the rest of the competitive field. In April 2011, Tom Lapilli wrote an article titled About Jace. He said, every deck in the top 8 of Grand Prix Dallas had 4 copies of Jace the Mind Sculptor, and later wrote, I should be crystal clear about our current topic. Jace the Mind Sculptor is more powerful than we intended it to be. 2 months later, in June 2011, Aaron Forsythe announced for the first time in over 5 years that Standard would suffer a banning. The 2 cards that fell to the hammer were StoneForge Mystic and Jace the Mind Sculptor. Just like Tom Lapilli, Forsythe wrote, of course, we didn't fully understand Jace's power. Now let's go back to our horror movie trope for a second here. The banning of June 2011 was the exact moment the Boogeyman was born, because in order to create the Boogeyman, you must first silence him.
Not strong enough yet.
Put him in the corner. Erase him from the collective memory.
Whole sections of the records are gone. They covered him up, Will. They never told us about Freddy because that's how they decided to beat him.
Had it never been banned, the phrase Jace the Mind Sculptor would not carry such grandeur. But what does Mind Sculptor actually mean? What about the name informs us of the card that Magic players have grown to fear so much? I called upon one of the community's leading story experts to find out. My chat with Carrie Thomas, also known as Vronos on Twitter, helped paint a better picture about Jace's character trajectory and the dark side he used to possess.
Yeah, Jace the Mind Sculptor ripping your entire library, exile all cards from target player's library, then that player shuffles his or her hand into his or her library, gets to that limited scope of, like, Jace being a ruthless agent who was willing to mind wipe everybody. Being able to shape somebody's entire mind was a key part of his character.
Carrie told me that Mind Sculptor encapsulated all of Jace's work in the Consortium as an evil agent of Tezzeret, as explored in the novel Agents of Artifice.
It's a strange era because throughout that time he is displayed as a morally ambiguous character.
Learning that Jace used to be a villainous character led to more questions, though. How did he shift so far away from these behaviors and become the Guild Pact for Ravnica, a sort of ultimate arbiter assigned to keep the guilds intact?
So 3 eras, very loosely, I would put them at pre-RTR, that is his Consortium era, and then RTR to Battle for Zendikar is his very loosely Guild Pact era, and then Battle for Zendikar starts his post-Magic origin story, which is him trying to feel some responsibility for the Eldrazi mess and fix it.
Right, so 3 eras of Jace, starting with the evil Mind Sculptor, then moving into a neutral and law-abiding role on Ravnica, and finally into a detective role determined to tamper the destruction he brought to Zendikar. This was the first moment I fully understood the depth of Jace's character, an aspect that many Magic players criticize him for lacking, and so I asked Carrie about Jace fatigue, A common complaint's that Magic is obsessed with using him as an icon for their brand.
But when you look back on like the last decade, which is an entire era of post-mending storytelling, he's not in that much. It's more of an optics issue where people think that they see more of Jace than they do.
Only 9 Jace Planeswalker cards have ever been printed, and 2 of them were in Ixalan. In comparison, Garrick has seen 5 Walker cards, and the last one was 3 years ago. Gideon is next, with 6 Planeswalker cards bearing his name. Both Chandra and Nissa have 8 Planeswalker cards each, only 1 fewer than Jace, and Liliana is in a close third with 7 of her own. So Jace's distribution is not as prevalent as you may think. His reputation as Mind Sculptor has superseded his falsely perceived ubiquity in the game. The Boogeyman, in essence, is all in our head. And this brings us to now. Since Mind Sculptor's banning, the card has only seen play in Legacy and Vintage, and some cubes who dared to tinker with his raw power. Yet from its inception, Modern has never removed Jace the Mind Sculptor from its banned list. Nor has STONEFORGE Mystic ever been cast in the format out of fear that the Caw Blade deck would simply be recreated and rise to dominance once again. But it has been 6 years since Forsyth's announcement, just long enough for people to forget how strong the deck was. Now, rumors are cultivating about bringing the Boogeyman out of captivity. From Shaheen Sarani's article in March of 2017, I fully expect Jace to get unbanned soon. Shaheen and other advocates of the decision argue that a 4-mana card that does not instantly win the game would fold immediately to Modern's explosively fast combo and aggro kills, and that Mind Sculptor would become a sideboard staple specifically for control mirrors. This article was a direct response to Aaron Forsyth's tweets that addressed the forthcoming banned and restricted announcement in February 2017. Corey Burkhart responded, "All I can give is my feeling that this is too risky of an unban." Reed Duke agreed. Maybe these two remember much better the Boogeyman's effect on a format. Perhaps Mr. Forsyth himself could take a look into the past at his own words from June 2011. Saying Jace doesn't win the game by himself is like saying Black Lotus doesn't win the game by itself, except Jace actually does. Regardless of the debate, the closest we have come to a potential unbanning happened on October 17, 2017, with a vague descriptor that read, "We did discuss unbanning in Modern." Curious. But maybe the most succinct and logical argument to explain why Jace remains locked away is simply a matter of supply. Travis Allen tweeted, "They can't unban Jace without a heavy reprint. It would be $200 if unbanned today. No room for sufficient reprint until Modern Masters 4. Without a bigger conduit to supply the players, how could they justify the guaranteed doubling of the card's already expensive $60 price tag? Reliving the Tarmogoyf era is certainly a spooky thought." And so here we are, safe for the moment from the Boogeyman's resurrection. All I can say to you now, my dear listener, is to be careful where you take your dreams, for they may come back to haunt you. I'm a proud partner of CardKingdom.com. Use CardKingdom.com/studies to support the show. Very special thank you to Carrie Thomas for educating me on all things Jace. If you would like to listen to that entire conversation, we talk about Jace's history in the game from beginning to end lore-wise. Go to my website, risticstudies.com, and look under the articles tab. I'll have the entire interview there. Carrie is a great person to talk to and listen to, so you'll enjoy that. Also, of course, if you enjoyed this video, then go ahead and check out my website. There's a bunch of other card study videos there, and go ahead and jump on my Patreon page if you'd like to support the show and see more of these episodes. We just hit another goal, which is the reason why this video was made, so I'm excited to look forward into the future and maybe another tier goal to see what happens with the channel. So also lots of people to thank. This was my biggest multimedia project to date. You can tell there's just tons of sources in the video info, and I used a ton of videos and audios from a bunch of different shows. The Humans of Magic podcast, shout out to them, shout out to Evan Irwin, etc., etc. So thank you for helping me build this monster of a video. The music for this episode was composed by Pracs. I just discovered this artist. I really enjoy him. Usually I use Lakey inspired, as you guys know, but Pracs is another really cool producer, so I hope to use some of his work in the future. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys have a happy Halloween. I'm a big time fan of old horror movies and slashers and thrillers and such, so hopefully you guys enjoyed that aspect of this video. And if not, don't worry, Halloween is soon to end. Shout out to Shivam Bhat. I know you're not into Halloween like I am, so thanks again for watching, guys. Of course, cardkingdom.com/studies and my Patreon page are the two best ways to support what I do. Appreciate you. See you next time. Cheers.